Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. We are going live on this beautiful night with my dear brother, Abu Yusuf. You guys might know him from TikTok a long time ago and from YouTube and many other places. Today's topic really is talking more about justice, just to elaborate more about justice. And obviously, we already heard the news that the Brother Khalifa, he has been executed, unfortunately, and nobody believes that justice was served in this case. And this situation right now, we are going to be talking about this. Let's hear a little bit about your background. Please first introduce yourself and let brothers know or remember you. Alhamdulillah, I'm sure people know you. I still have a nice video about you in my collection of videos, and I'm sure brothers will know who you are.
Yes, I think maybe some people remember me out there, although I really hope that for the most part they don't. That was an interesting chapter of my life, be on that app and be in the public sphere. But I'm so happy after a year and a half of retiring back to my private little life. I love it, and I don't come out of the house much except for people like you, my dear honorable brother. When I could be of service to your work, I'll pop up, but it's one of the few times I'll pop out in public anymore.
Subhanallah. Jazakallah khair, man. Before we ask you more about the case, and obviously we're not gonna be chopping down the case and figuring out things, but you've heard about the brother and all that stuff. We want to talk a little bit about justice, and this is the title of this live, basically. What does the word mean to you as a person that who knows the law, and what should it mean to everybody else?
Yeah, as a little background, I think you asked me, I've been a licensed practicing attorney for 7 years. I'm an attorney in 4 different states, including Michigan, actually. The Michigan courts went all remote during COVID, so even though I'm not in Michigan, I can go to those hearings on Zoom.
Allah, yeah, all Zoom now.
Yeah, all Zoom. So I'm not a criminal lawyer, but of course, all lawyers have to learn that area of the law. They have to learn about the systems of law school system that they're just familiarity with. Justice is something that's very important to me. Justice is something that has always been something that is important to me. My father was a judge for a time growing up, and as I was growing up, I learned about all the famous Supreme Court cases as the United States tried to unravel its very heavy history of apartheid and all these things. And those were my fireside bedtime stories growing up. So it's always been something that's very important to me. And one of the key things that awakened in me belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know if I ever told you, I abandoned religion as a young boy due to what I saw inconsistencies, hypocrisies, abuses. And one of the things that attracted me to Islam was its demand for justice. This heavy word. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hope everybody else can hear.
Justice. What does justice mean? What are we talking about when we talk about justice? The scales. The idea that is unique in Islam that no matter who you are, what you've done, even if you're not even a thinking person, every single being, creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will be given their full rights, no matter what they've done, whoever it is. Even trees, plants, everything on the day of judgment will be reconciled and given its due rights. No one will get away with harming anyone, taking away anyone's rights. Justice is such an important aspect of Islam. It's a demand in Islam. It's what a Sharia calls for and aims for, and it's something that is unique in Islam, the sense of justice. Of course, our Western sense of justice, we have the criminal justice system, which you read some literature on it. I can send you, there's a lot of good literature on the foundations of our Western legal system being tied to Sharia influences. It's hard to really prove those things, but they just started coming up with the jury system right around the time they were doing crusades. And they got to experience some of the North African courts that were run, of course, from the time of Khilafah. Justice. Justice is something that brought me closer to Islam, probably closer to belief, and it's something I've always chased after. And that's why I went to law school. Law has been something I've always been around. And this system that we have, which aims to try to establish justice by, in cases like our brother, at least saying that we assume that people are innocent until proven guilty. It's something we like to say. This is the expression, just something we like to hold on to. But in cases like that brother, good people who are clearly innocent fall through the cracks. You follow me?
Yes.
Yeah, people talk about this system. They love this system because the mantra is the system is great. If a few people say, we'd rather see a few good people, innocent people go to jail, or in that brother's case, rahmatullah alayhi.
Rahmatullah alayhi.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted him as a shaheed.
Ameen, ameen.
Cases like our brother even put to death, innocent people put to death for the sake of the system.
Yes.
For the sake of the system. And I think that's somewhat where you're going to see a divergence. Of course, I'm not an expert in Islam. I'm studying right now. I'm studying fiqh right now, but I'm not by any means an expert qualified to speak to all the specifics. But the aim of the Sharia, the aim of Islamic law is to establish, just like we're talking about on the Mizan and Yawm al-Qiyamah, to establish the haqq of every single person, the rights of every single person. You look in the situation with our brother, for instance, innocent, and even the prosecution office was saying they had evidence that he could be innocent.
Yes.
You hear stories that the parents, this is the interesting part, that like Islam has execution too. Like we don't have a problem with the act of execution if someone deserves it, if someone's been proven.
Correct.
You look at the options in Islam. So the family of the victim in this case, some of the family were speaking out to try to intervene for the brother. But we know what would happen in the Sharia. Like the haqq of someone being executed after something like this in Islam is that the family is having their rights given back to them. So they have an option to forgive.
Correct. Drop their charges.
Compensation. Yeah. So in this case, like in our system, I think this is what I'm trying to get at. The system aims to find justice for the system, whereas Islam aims to give justice for every single
to the
individual.
people.
Yeah.
So do you think, let me cut you here, I'm sorry. Do you think this is what happened here, that the judge was actually trying to serve the justice for the system itself?
That's just how the system works. He was guilty, innocent till proven guilty, and then sentenced to death. And then after that, his lawyers have to fight to try to overturn it, flips it on its head. So up until the point he was convicted by those 12 jurors, I think it's 12. Yeah, he was innocent until that happened. He's guilty, and then they have to try to overturn it. So
it was a jury trial, from what you heard. Okay,
it's got to be a jury.
It has to be
12, regular folks.
What do you think of the jury?
They all have to agree. So.
Yeah. What do you think of the jury in general? Is that a justice system?
I think overall I have a pretty good feeling about the jury system, as long as it's. The problem is people are part of the system. So when you're talking about evidence that gets suppressed, people that try to take advantage of the system, and I think that's something that exists in any system. Juries, do you know what the function of a jury is? You know what
I'm not so big on. No, I don't know. I wish you can explain if you don't mind.
I'll try to lay it out. So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit scattered here.
No, you're fine.
The function of a jury is purely a fact finder. So the law is a neutral thing. Because if you do X, Y, and Z, this happens to you, or this range of things happens to you. So the judge has a little discretion. I'll give you the minimum, or I'll give you the maximum, or whatever.
Right.
The jury's only job is to decide and help them figure out what's the truth. So the jury listens to both sides' arguments, looks at both sides as evidence, and it's their job to say, this person's lying, this person's telling the truth. The only thing the jury does is they say guilty or innocent.
And the lawyer is trying to convince the jury that this person is guilty. The other one's trying to convince is innocent.
Precisely. And there's rules about things that you can present to the jury. So there's a whole system of rules about what you can say to the jury. The jury has to be isolated so they can't talk to the public. There's certain types, and the evidence rules are all based on what do I give to the jury? Is it actually going to be helpful, or is it going to prejudice the jury and make them act emotionally versus trying to prove? The jury is supposed to be a neutral fact finder that says this happened, this didn't. And the idea in cases like this murder trial, like the idea is 12 random people have to agree that he did it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, there's flaws with that.
Obviously.
I generally have the theory of the system is good, just the people aspect of it.
They got to be qualified with some kind of qualification. At least to say.
That's why the whole system the system is put in place to put these people on a railroad track.
Mm.
And so there are 12 random people. Of course, they can be eliminated if they're not competent or if they're biased or things like that, if they have bias in the case. The theory of the jury system is a great system. It's just in practice, there's so much that can manipulate it.
Mm-hmm.
And in cases like this, whereas getting back to what I was saying, this whole system, the idea of the system is that the system works the same way no matter who is in front of it, right? So that's their idea of justice. Whereas in Islamic law, the idea of justice is delivering the haqq to each and every person, and making sure that the haqq is upheld. So there's no chance in an Islamic court that having this evidence that this man was innocent, that this would have happened.
Mm.
There's no procedure, there's no jury, there's no chance that the Qadi would allow this execution to take place. And the Qadi has, and I think further explanation, in our system, the judge's job is to conduct the hearing. So he enforces the rules of decorum, he makes sure that the rules of evidence are enforced. His job is to make sure that the hearing goes according to the system. And based on whatever the jury says,
mm-hmm.
he applies the law. Like he'll give the sentence. There are cases where you'll have the judge be both the jury and judge, but it won't be something serious like this.
Mm-hmm.
But so the whole idea is that the system works the same for every person, no matter what, even if good people go to jail. Whereas in Islam, the Qadi has so much more power and so much more flexibility to make sure that each individual haqq is preserved.
Correct. Because the Qadi or the judge in Islam, is a person of qualifications that passes many qualifications that we could see today's system, subhanAllah. The attorneys also in Islamic law are also upon Sharia. They look at the law from the Sharia point of view, as well as obviously evidence and all that good stuff. But in this guy's case, brother, subhanAllah, when you're hearing his last words, when you're listening to what people had to say about him, and the evidence that they actually have for him, and the evidence that they're looking for, they're hoping to have, but they don't have, it's just so unfair. Allahu musta'an. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him shahada. Allahumma ameen. And make him from those who...
You know that the two types that, that in addition, of course, to the soldiers, the one who's killed by an oppressive ruler, oppressive system, that one of the two types that, at least in the system I've learned, is one of the two types you wouldn't even have to wash, right?
Yes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him that. And also, the way of execution in Missouri is just basically putting them to sleep, right?
Do they have I hate to look at stuff, it makes me really sad. Did they use the medication?
I did not look at it myself, neither.
It's lethal injection.
I was wondering, is it lethal injection?
Yeah, lethal injection is just the worst.
Yeah.
The state that I live in uses lethal injection when they can get their hands on the drug. And the number of botched executions is just ridiculous. Who is it really for? The idea of lethal injection is that everyone who's carrying out the surgery feels like it's much more humane, right?
Yeah.
They feel like it's much more humane. For the person being executed, it's hours of suffering.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. That's crazy, man. SubhanAllah, though it is a lot of suffering, he had, I was listening to I have it posted on my thing. I'll send you the actual video, inshallah. His last words were amazing. How he was calling people to fear Allah and how he was telling people this life is short. And then Sheikh Hassan Somali was the person that was talking to him in the last phone conversation he actually had. And he was reminding him that you are fortunate enough to have those last moments by yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you can have those last words, actually die upon la ilaha illallah, saying all these things, maybe pray two rak'ahs before you pass. SubhanAllah, it's just, when you really put yourself in this guy's shoes, ya Allah, shivering, man.
I'd rather be in his place than have a Lamborghini and all the money in the world. Like,
you're right. At the moment, oh my God, his words were hitting my heart like pounding, brother. Subhanallah, subhanallah.
Yeah, he really, that's the thing. As Muslims, if you're a believer that believes and you believe with all your heart, you only fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's literally no way you can lose.
Yes.
And if we're just talking about the circumstances of our brother, we hate the fact that it's happened to our brother, but we feel jealous that he got to end his life like that.
Yes, absolutely. Subhanallah. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala al-afiyah. Afiyah is a very big thing. Afiyah also is justice, because when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this, afiyah is being able to live with peace and safety and security and all that stuff too. Not only in the body, but in the environment, in the lifestyle that you're living in. Afiyah from zulm, afiyah from oppression, afiyah from wrongdoing and all that stuff. Subhanallah. And this is very hard to accept when it comes to looking at reality, but it is what it is. It happened and life goes on. And you look at what's happening overseas in the places of whether it's the Middle East or in Africa or anywhere. And this is happening every day. But what's hurting us here is that the system did this. Over there, it's just militia going out and doing all these things and attacking people left and right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we don't have a problem with the death penalty in and of itself.
Absolutely.
As Muslims, there's so many issues that the fuqaha are trying to figure out in this new world we live in the last 100 years, but it's not something like official. But I've heard from a few, and I've always felt this way, that of course our brothers that are convicted of the system, I would assume are innocent until convicted under our system. But in a general sense, we don't have a problem with the execution. It's doing it to people who don't deserve it, who are not guilty, and it's the manner they carry it out.
Yeah, subhanallah.
Yeah.
That's Allah afiyah.
So this had been in our system, the family could have forgiven him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've seen this. I've seen this many times.
Yeah.
Even in today's systems all throughout the world, where the families actually forgiven the person who is ready to be taken out, and then the judge will just forgive. And
especially in our countries, like they come to this aspects of Sharia, and they will let them go. And that's the thing. Our system is meant to punish for the system's sake, but the punishment in Islam is for the people who got their family member taken away. There's no giving this life back. But the people left behind, they get to choose whether they get to take their piece of flesh or let them go.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. SubhanAllah. And besides that, how long has he been in jail? Over 20.
Oh, yeah. This happened back in the 90s, right?
Yeah, 96, 97.
Yeah. So I was just rolling into kindergarten.
Is that right? You young buck, you.
Yeah, 31.
31, mashallah. Yeah. And all this time that he was serving, all this time he was all on death row, and all it was, they were just still trying to find him guilty.
So that's another thing. It's not that they were trying to find him guilty. You ever see a TV show? I'm saying it like 2 messages. You better want to end them. You ever see lawyer TV shows and you're on the same objection?
Yes.
Every time they say objection, Your Honor, and the honor says overruled, you can appeal the ruling for every single time the judge says overruled.
Really?
Yeah, so for every single one of those objections that gets overturned, you can. So the court system works like this, and I want to tell you a joke that one of my mentors, who's a former federal judge, told me about how the courts work. The courts work in a system where you have the grassroots court, which is like the trial court, the one in town that you go to. Then there's state level appellate courts, and they're the ones. So if in a state court, it doesn't work out, you want to try to overturn something, you go to the state appellate court, and then from there, that's usually where the buck stops. But from there, if there's an issue that has to do with the federal constitution, you could potentially take it from the state to the real Supreme Court, I guess the federal Supreme Court. But generally speaking, the federal Supreme Court has no say in the state cases. The federal Supreme Court. So you also have the same system, but that's for each state. But the federal system had its own court system. So in every big city, there's a federal district court. They have an appellate court, which is shared between the states. 3 or 4 states have the same court. Ours is seated in Colorado, like 3 or 4 different states. And then from there, it goes to the Supreme Court. So it depends on what system you're in, federal or state. So anytime they say overruled on your objection, generally speaking, they can file after the ruling comes out an appeal. And so long as there's an appeal pending, they can't actually execute them.
I see.
So that process takes 20, 30, 40, sometimes longer years, 50 years. People can be sitting in death row for 30, 40 years waiting to die.
And not sure if it's going to actually happen or not.
Yeah, so like I file an appeal for one of those objections, right? I file my appeal. Then we go through a process where the prosecution files a counter response. We have discussions on discovery. We have discussions on this. I might not even have a hearing on my first motion for 2 or 3 years out.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, and that's another thing I think I was going to mention before we started on the conversation. The theory of the system is so good and innocent till proven guilty, right? But the reality is, with the magnitude of the courts that we have, the court can't handle to actually give people that trial. So you look at criminal cases, most of them, guilty or not, most of them don't go to trial because the prosecutor has so much on his plate. The court has so much on its plate that if you actually want to take it to trial, you're not going to be in court for years. So the prosecutor's like, all right, either you can sit, if you can't afford bail, you can sit in the jail cell and be unconvicted for 3 years, and we'll go to trial in 3 years, or you can go home tomorrow and I'll write you down as guilty, you're a felon, and you don't have to serve your sentence as long as you don't do anything, but you're a felon now, and we'll go about your business. So you have a lot of examples of people where innocent, they take the plea so they can go home.
Subhanallah.
Because the courts can't handle, they say if everyone wanted to take it to trial, the courts would fail care.
Allahu Akbar. That's crazy.
Yeah, you ever think about it? So the theory's good, but it's the reality on the ground, the people who participated in it.
Trying to apply it and actually, man.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
And it gives room for manipulation to happen and issues to
I think
crooks to
that's
play
true
games.
with anything, though. People can lie no matter what. Any system can have liars. The fact the system is meant to preserve itself rather than try to seek justice for people, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's a big problem. Yeah.
Yeah, the idea is we think this is the best way to give people justice, but justice is blind to any situation. So even if we know this guy's guilty, we'll still put him out because that's the system that has to happen.
And that's the unfortunate truth. Allah understand.
Am I putting him to sleep yet?
Huh?
Am I putting him to sleep after yet?
No, you're not putting anybody to sleep. This valuable information, inshallah, will be broadcast in pieces here and there.
You're live, right?
Yeah, I'm currently live. So what I'm gonna do, inshallah, I'm gonna take it and chop it up and put it out there as we go, inshallah. So in this time, that we have brothers and sisters waiting for trials and stuff like that. And I'm sure there are many like this brother
Oh
who are
yeah,
not heard of.
yeah.
Like
I've
this
done
brother,
some.
we never heard of him until recently when
Yeah,
things hit the fan.
yeah. And there's Muslims like in prison everywhere. I've done some. I've done prison dawah over the years. I've done like work with presidents, and they're all over, everywhere.
Innocent, just sitting there waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, I mean, just, you hear the word jail and you hear the word prison. You know the distinction, right?
Yeah, tell us, please.
But you can tell me, Rick, what is
No, I want you to tell us. I think I might have it wrong.
jail? You're innocent until you're proven guilty, but also if there's probable cause that you did it, and there's some interest, if the public might be harmed, which is generally they're thinking you might run away or something, they're going to put you in jail
Uh-huh.
while you wait for your actual trial. And if you lose the trial, you go to prison. So jail is like the waiting place where most of the people in jail aren't convicted of anything. They're just chilling until the real punishment starts. Now, again, if you have money in this country, or if you're willing to accept money from loan sharks, you can get out of jail for a period of time.
SubhanAllah.
They got the bail system.
Yeah, the bills when you put up a portion of the bond.
Yeah, and they got the loan sharks to until you ran into that.
SubhanAllah. It's a lot of afia. That's a lot of afia. So who you work, are you able to say who you are working with? Like when you want to help out these people in prison and stuff like that?
We had a local grassroots prison dawah program. I've had, my schedule's been crazy, so it's been maybe a year since I've been able to do regular work with them. But we have some local efforts here. There's a chef in our state who's responsible for,
MashaAllah.
he's the quote unquote emir. He's like the emir for the region. So he does monitors what goes in and out for education. He goes in and gives. I got there for the pre-release brothers for a while. So we had a program where the brothers who were on the way out, the pre-release sentence, if they had really good behavior, they could qualify for a program. So I used to go on Fridays. I had a special badge with the state. I could go. I picked up brothers from the facility, and I got to bring them to Jumu'ah.
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
I did that for maybe 2 years.
Allahu Akbar. Jazakallah khair. That's amazing.
Yeah, because I'm
MashaAllah.
not saying that I want to say that to tell people about it, but I'm just making people aware. No matter where you are in the country, there's stuff you could do to help your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And the look on these brothers' faces, when so many of them, this uncle that I met, he accepted Islam in the 90s, and he was on the last little bit of his 40-something year sentence. And I took him to the masjid for the first time
Allah.
in 2022 or something. And he was just crying. Like, he'd been a Muslim since the 90s. It was 2022, and like the first time he walked into a masjid and prayed in a real musalla with their imam.
22. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he's been Muslim almost as long as I've been alive.
Allahu Akbar. Ya Allah. That's crazy.
Beautiful. You can do stuff and honestly, you don't, to anybody listening, you don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to be this person that picks them up, but just to visit or write or send Qur'ans or send letters, these brothers just
means
want
the
to
world.
be seen. They want to be seen. They want to be like, they really want people on the outside to see them and connect with them.
Ya Allah.
You can change someone's life just by sending letters.
Allahu Akbar. How about legally? I heard that CARE had a lot to do with at least spreading awareness about this brother that just passed. May Allah have mercy on him. But are there any other legal entities that are helping out like that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I know the Innocence Project had a lot to do with this. Well, they were trying to, there's a couple of good nonprofits try to get people out of prison in our state. A man, had been recently released. I think he was 75 he was like 75 or something. He'd been in jail since he was 20.
Allah.
The Innocence Project proved that he was innocent the whole time. You know what? In his case, I think it was crazy. He wasn't even in the state when the crime happened.
Yeah, Allah. And they still put him in jail.
Yeah.
Was he in jail for death row too?
He wasn't on death row. He was just serving Yeah,
There's a sentence, yeah.
yeah, I think it was a murder or something, but they put him in for, I think, life without parole. He can never get out. He spent 50-something years in jail, and they sued the police force that basically trumped up evidence against him. And maybe he got $4 million, $5 million. 50 years of your life is priceless.
It is.
It's priceless.
I know another brother that also came out of jail after many years. They gave him some money, and himself, I want to spend this money, of course, but all that time that was lost, was wasted. Dhulm. Waliyadu billah.
And unless you're one of those who and uses your time wisely.
Yeah.
And some people go to jail and they come out with fraud, and for good people of Tazkiyah and good people of San, I think maybe a jail cell would look good for them.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the very exceptional people amongst us.
Yeah, I've heard a few brothers who went in a friend of mine, I know, my friend, he's in jail right now, and he has, mashallah, gained a lot of knowledge in this time that he was in. He's been there for over 20 years now. Mashallah, he wrote a book, he's been preaching, he's been talking to people about Islam and Jesus and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Musa alayhi salam and everybody. And he has a lot of good impact. And currently he just recently reached out to me and he told me he started taking classes at a community college. They moved him from one place to another so he could take college classes. He's gonna get his bachelor's degree and all that stuff. MashaAllah, he has done a lot for himself. And I don't think, knowing him, I don't think he would have done the same if he had never been to jail. It's sad to say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes gives you trials for specific reasons just so you can get somewhere where he wants you to be.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So like this brother that passed away, rahmatullah alayh, he was put in these trials to a point where he was promised a very good spot, inshallah.
Yeah, if we sound crazy to anybody else that aren't believers, I really feel, I look at his position and I feel like you can't go out. There's only fair few ways you can go out that are better than that.
I know, man.
Yeah.
This is crazy, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
It's beautiful in the way of the believers, because the Prophet ﷺ said, every situation for a believer is good.
Yeah.
And when a regular person listens to it and says, every situation? What are you talking about? Come on, man. Like, this guy got in an accident. How's that good for him? This guy got sentenced to jail. How is that good for him? And so on and so forth. But to look at the hidden gems in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the hidden gems in the Quran, you understand how this is so beautiful. This is such a big blessing. This is such a great virtue from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on and so forth. May Allah give us yaqeen in His creed and tawakkul, also give us tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because seriously, when that happens, that's when we understand that everything that happens to the mu'min is hands down all good for him, alhamdulillah.
And it's the best feeling in the world to not be able to be disappointed. Like, some brothers get taken aback when something really bad happens. You'll say, alhamdulillah, and they say, why are you saying alhamdulillah? Of course you're saying alhamdulillah. Like, how much worse could it have been? It's such a relief to not be concerned about the outcome of something. As long as you trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't leave anything on the table, you do your absolute best. You can't be disappointed by anything. Like,
yeah,
you can't be disappointed.
Exactly.
That's such an elite way to live.
Subhanallah. So being a good Muslim who is following the correct Islam would mean you'll be living stress-free.
Yeah.
Literally.
That's great.
No stress whatsoever. No depression.
You don't stress about, am I doing enough? Am I grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Those are the kind of stresses that I like.
That's the stress that you should have, only to make you do better. But seriously, yeah.
As far as like as long as I keep focusing on being grateful to Allah, I'm never disappointed by anything.
Allah.
Especially, I guess in my time since I deleted that app, which is the best decision I ever made. One of the best decisions I ever made. I spent a lot of time just focused on trying to be grateful.
Allahu Akbar.
My kids were driving the car the other day, coming home from Home Depot, and I was like, let's talk about what you're grateful for. And they would say stuff like, oh, the car, heaters. No, I'm talking about little stuff. Be grateful you can see. Are you grateful you can walk?
Man.
We saw an uncle in the masjid a couple of weeks ago. And he lost one of his feet, but he was still standing up and praying. I was like, remember that uncle? Are you happy that you have both your feet?
Allahu
Just
Akbar.
the little things.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Allahu Akbar. So let me take back a question that I've been wanting to ask you. So you deleted the app for what specific reason?
A mixture of things.
Uh-huh.
I was never a fan of it in the first place. So I was one of these millennial that kind of resembled, I felt, I guess the kids these days would say like boomerish about it from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
I've always seen TikTok as a negative overall thing.
Yeah.
And I've always warned, even when I was on it, I was warning people against getting it.
Allahu Akbar.
A brother convinced me to get on there because he was like, well, there's a bunch of kids already on there looking at stupid stuff. Maybe you could try to intervene. I don't like being a public figure. At the time, I hadn't even posted on Facebook or Instagram or anything in years. So I jumped into that with the intention to try to get some of these brothers off. And at some point, you argue with people, you go back and forth, you do all this stuff. It's a very negative environment.
Yeah.
And at some point, you're never gonna, sometimes, subhanAllah, there's a couple of great things that came out of it. I still am connected. I got to witness the nikah of the research from chicas that I still talk to all the time.
MashaAllah.
There's some great brothers that I've met on there. Some great things came out of it. I was able to raise some money and show, alhamdulillah, for this message in Mexico. Some great things happened.
MashaAllah.
Overall, it's a very negative environment. I think it's nice that it can wake people up to wanting to learn about it. The knowledge you get on there is really just surface level. It's not. A lot of the people trying to teach, including myself, are ignorant. Anytime I think about me trying to teach people that Islam, I feel embarrassed and shit. Because the more I learn about Islam, the more I know that I'm completely ignorant and unqualified to do that. So I think it's a negative environment. Overall, if I'm trying to convince people at a certain point, I think generally speaking, you're preaching to the choir and you're not really bringing anyone to your side. You're just yelling at each other. And so I didn't really see that I was getting the benefit out of it that I wanted. And overall, it was negative for my own
SubhanAllah.
psyche and stuff. So yeah.
So you did a balance.
It wasn't
Checks and balances, huh?
Yeah, it wasn't worth it. So I just thought back to it. I've been just focused on raising my kids and studying.
Maybe do table dawah in one of the colleges or something like that. I mean,
I take plans up to my hometown. There's no Muslims out there doing that kind of stuff. I don't volunteer to give clip of them. Sometimes I need khatib or stuff. I just try to do little stuff.
that's good enough, man. Look, the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, "Balighu anni walau ayah," you know, when we are asked to deliver and tell people about the Prophet ﷺ, at least one verse, that's our capacity and capabilities. And obviously, we have to do our checks and balances and make sure that we are able to balance everything, so that way something is not taking over other things. That way, you're messing up your life. So it takes a lot of courage to do what you have done. In a lot of situations, in cases like yourself, if people had, mashallah, the audience and the knowledge that you had, they would say, I would never let go, because I think I'm putting a lot of benefit out there. And alhamdulillah, the benefit is there, but at the end of the day, there are other things that may get affected by you trying to make this benefit. I've heard this many times from the ulama, where they say, you have to call to da'wah, or you have to call the call of da'wah and tell people about Islam. But you have to be very careful that you don't forget about yourself and you neglect yourself. At the same time, neglecting your family, at the same time, neglecting your job, neglecting major things that are important to your life, or being like the candle where it lights up for everybody else, and then all of a sudden it finds itself melted and done without having anything for itself.
That's beautiful. You have so many opportunities to do dawah in every single part of your life.
Absolutely.
The more abrasive things, my license plate says takbir.
MashaAllah.
So but subtle things. I'm a business development person for my life.
Oh,
With
what's
all the
up?
conferences, I bring in business for the firm, and I do a lot of business negotiations. I do a lot of, I do negotiations with vendors and stuff. And you'll be in situations where you're trying to do a contract negotiation or something, and somebody will be like, hey, someone asked you a tough question. Sometimes to negotiate, people try to misrepresent or mischaracterize things. Just tell them we're not gonna be there Thursday or something like, they'll just have these little white lies. And anytime someone asks me to do that, I always say, I'm a Muslim, my religion, I can't lie about that kind of thing.
Allahu
I
Akbar.
always, like, I'm not gonna do something in this negotiation. If anything I tell them, if they give me some kind of estimate, if the person said, have you seen this contract, or have you seen this paperwork? I'll say, before I say, yes, I've seen this thing, it's right there, I'll call the person and say, can you show me this? It's like, I'm not gonna lie to you and say that I've seen this or I've done this. And I always make sure to remind them, like, my religion prohibits me from lying in this situation. I'm not gonna lie to you or try to cheat you or mischaracterize something just to get your business.
Yeah, wow, that's
You
amazing.
can just work it into everything. And I think people appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. And that, subhanAllah, taking these little things, even though it's not little, lying is a major issue, but taking it lightly is gonna just keep on building to the point where it becomes nothing. Oh, I can have a little lie here, I can have a little lie there, and then all of a sudden you find yourself lying about big things.
Vendors at the firm, if our firm is late in paying invoice, say, it's okay, you can pay next week. Or I like, no, we're commanded to pay people as soon as their sweat dries. I'm gonna talk to accounting, and I'm gonna make sure you get paid as soon as possible.
Right now, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like, I'm gonna talk, you need the money to live your life, it's your livelihood. I'm gonna talk to accounting right now, I'll get them paid right that second, and I'll always work it, because my beliefs, my belief system dictates you have to be paid as soon as for your work.
MashaAllah.
You can work, you don't have to be burdensome, you don't have to make it heavy, it should be a real subtle part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And even you don't have to mention it right away. If you do a lot of dealing, eventually they're like, why are you doing this or that? But you can make it real subtle, but if you follow the commands of religion and you make it clear why you're doing it, it's good to out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to justice, being just with people in every little thing, subhanAllah. And you're already in the system of legal work and being a lawyer and all that stuff. SubhanAllah, that also says a lot. You practice justice in your work and this type of environment. Man, that's da'wah by itself, man.
I'm trying to. There's another lawyer involved. Right now I'm working on a pro bono case for this poor Afghani girl.
Oh, I remember you told me something about this in the group.
I don't know how many, the trial's ongoing, so I don't know how many details I should reveal. Maybe after it's over, I can tell you, and we can have a follow-up. But
Yeah.
because of the case, there's an anonymous lawyer involved who's learning a lot about Islam. This person's that, like, falling in love with Islam just because of the values that
Allahu Akbar.
the masjid is helping me raise money to pay that anonymous lawyer, because I'm doing it for free, but this person doesn't have an interest, so we're trying to pay the bills. The masjid, like, was collecting the donation, then writing a check to this person, and, like, they just can't, this person can't believe when I said give them a check from the masjid, here's your legal fees. Like, it's just a little family. He said, like, in big churches, like, people get overlooked all the time. Like, they never do something. Like, they have big causes that they'll raise money for, but they won't just look at an individual person and pay them thousands and thousands of dollars. Just the fact that the masjid is standing behind this random family is just
amazing.
This person falling in love with Islam because of that.
Yes.
You guys stick together and take care of each other, even if it's like a little insignificant person.
Allahu Akbar. Yes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, my dear brother. Jazakallah khair for this beautiful talk and for this beautiful meeting. I'm going to end the live real quick, and then we can continue talking for just a minute before we end this Zoom.
I almost don't want to, I'm really enjoying this.
Jazakallah khair, man. I'm enjoying having you, man, for sure. It's an honor having you. It's an honor talking to you and getting this knowledge from you, man. Seriously. Because this knowledge is not easily taken. Because right now we're very busy in this life, honestly. We're trying to support the family, trying to pay the bills, trying to do everything that is a means to make this happen. And at the same time, we can't forget that we are Muslims. We have obligations towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have obligations toward learning. And if we can do these conversations to gain that knowledge, this is amazing. This is amazing da'wah and worship at the same time, subhanAllah.
Yeah. I'll leave you with, I don't know if you've ended the live yet, but I have one more.
No, I didn't end the live yet, no.
On the timing, so like when I was back in TikTok, I drive 1,200 miles a month for work because my office is almost 2 hours away. I have a split deal where I can work part of the week at home and part of the week at the office. I'm not moving to that town because there's no message. My kids are in a good establishment, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah.
So I'm gonna make the commute. When I'm on those rides, I've been falling a little bit behind on them, but I try to commit. I'm gonna try to learn an ayah, just like driving by repeating and stuff. That started back in, let's take that into a buffet. About to finish page 14, just the road trips, just like one ayah at a time. About to finish page 14 of buffet, just like going back and forth on the road.
Allahu Akbar, that's
One
amazing.
at a time.
I had a situation like that back in the early 2000s where I had to commute every weekend for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that time, I think it was about 2-3 years, I think I gained the most knowledge in my life because I was listening to Sheikh Al-Albani rahimahullah's lectures, maybe Sheikh bin Uthaymeen's lectures, maybe Sheikh Fawzan's lectures, Sheikh bin Baz's lectures, and so on and so forth. As you're going, you listen to one lecture, coming back, listen to another lecture, and so on and so forth, to the point where you feel the gain of that knowledge throughout these trips. And it's amazing. You could do that. And I know people who did the same in truck driving. They were able to actually memorize the entire Quran
Beautiful.
just by listening to it throughout their trips and trying to read with it until they get to the point where they memorize the entire Quran.
Yeah, you put it on repeat mode once a week. You call it your chef and just make sure you're not missing anything. That's good. Just
Yes.
use your time wisely.
Exactly.
If you got time.
Exactly. And with all this technology that we have currently, honestly, there's a lot of, right now, time management software, specifically like within the phones, within all these different apps. They give you that time management where it reminds you and it puts you in timeout if you pass that specific time, and it gives you alarms and it gives you notifications, which is amazing. All we have to do is just be able to use it correctly in order for us to manage our time and be watchful and alert when it comes to wasting time. Allahumma afina.
I want to get people off these films. I don't want to keep you here, but I was talking to Matt. If you click the, here's my neighbor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was talking to him the other day.
MashaAllah.
About organizing like a camp where we make everybody put their phones away
Oh, man.
for a weekend. They're not allowed to take pictures. They're not allowed to post on Instagram. Just no phones for 3 days.
Wow.
Take out the wilderness and
That'd be torture for some people.
Yeah.
That'd be nice, man. Seriously.
making that nuts. Like people don't need to.
Yeah, I have nothing but books and notebooks and reading and writing and running and walking and just enjoying nature.
Life. I
Man.
hate the fact that I have to have my phone on me. I have to have it for work. I always tell my kids, like, they don't. Almost 7 years, I've made it without iPads, without anything. They don't know how to use an iPad. Perfect. Like, you can make it without phones. Like, it's not a requirement.
You're right. And then I don't want to go off the topic right now, but you heard what happened in Lebanon.
Yes, my in-laws.
Oh my God. You saw what happened there, man? That's crazy.
Are you from Danny?
I'm not.
Yeah, my in-laws were in Beirut.
The army rule, it's using this technology against the people that's holding it. It's just like, how far have we gotten in this technology?
That's pretty scary.
It's scary, very dangerous.
Yeah, like I saw them, like, people are scared to use their, I guess, my internet router, get them.
Allah.
Something happened to it. Like,
Allahu Akbar.
people weren't watching TV, weren't answering the phone because they were afraid something was going to happen to them.
Yeah. Because if they were able to get to something like a walkie-talkie, then why not be able to get into something like a TV or like a computer or like a phone or something?
Yeah.
Allahumma afina. Yeah, it's scary. It's a scary world. These devices can be a sword of a double-edged sword, basically. That would be
I just don't like what it does to your brain after a while. It's nice to just get rid of it. I need it for work and I need it to communicate, but other than that, I really don't. I don't love that I have to have it.
Yeah, I hear you. Subhanallah. That's Allah.
I don't want to think of your whole night. It's but a snapshot by the topic to you.
Allah barik feek. Allah salmak.
About it a lot.
I'm gonna end the live real quick. This was a live show that we had about justice with Brother Abu Yusuf. Abu Yusuf is a great brother who was able to share with us some great knowledge. Alhamdulillah. It is an honor to discuss some of these issues with brothers like him who are very knowledgeable. Justice is what Allah commands the humans to practice in this life. Because one day, which is the judgment day, we all will be judged in front of the most just, which is Allah, the Most High. Join us in the next podcast as we dive into more issues to discuss and share with you, inshallah. Peace be upon all of you. Until next time. Assalamu alaikum.